Hey, it's Brent Barnett, and welcome back to Outdoor Adventures on Brownfield. On this week's episode, I took the show on the road to North Platte, Nebraska. I was attending the Buffalo Bill Farm and Ranch Expo and getting some farm radio interviews done for the Brownfield Network when I had the chance to sit down with Jon Farley from Lashley Land and Recreational Brokers out of western Nebraska. We started our conversation about farmland real estate and realized that things were quickly turning into a hunting podcast. So I thought it'd be a great idea to feature that interview here this week on Outdoor Adventures. Let's get to that conversation now here on Brownfield, and as always, we thank you for joining our show each week. I'm Brent Barnett on Brownfield Ag News, talking to you now from the Buffalo Bill Farm and Ranch Expo in North Platte, Nebraska. Joining us now is Jon Farley with Lashley Land and Recreational Brokers. Jon, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hey, man, it's great. This place is busy out here today. Wow.
It really is. There's been a lot of people coming by, and when folks are coming by your booth, what's kind of been top of mind for them?
Well, I mean, our company specializes in farm and ranch sales and recreational properties like hunting properties and that. So I do both. But I think people mostly come to me, for recreational properties. Like if a seller out there has a piece of land that really doesn't, bring any income in, it's just, just sitting there, maybe accretion ground along a river. I'd love to get up in the morning, get dressed, come out and meet you and look at that land and see what it's worth and what it might be able to do for you economically.
So do you primarily just cover Nebraska, or do you have a bigger region?
We are Nebraska experts with nationwide exposure. That's kind of our motto. And I'm from here. I've lived in Nebraska all my life, especially North Platte area. And, I've hunted and fished my entire life. And these guys coming in from out of state that are looking for hunting properties, and trust me, there is a very good market for that. And they come from all over. And they're looking for, a kind of a price point property and with a little bit of income. So in other words, I mean, if you had like 160 acres of ground and you have like a little bit of dry land or some irrigated along with, that hunting potential, that's what people want. So that way it takes care of their taxes and some other small expenses.
What's the hunting landscape like out here in western Nebraska? So I'm based in about central, southeastern Iowa. There's maybe not as much timber in my neck of the woods as there once was. A lot of prairie habitat now, a lot of marshy bottomland habitat, just kind of depending where you're at in the state. What's it look like out here in the North Platte area? Brent,
that is a great question. And I like I said, I know pretty much the whole state. If even from a farm and ranch perspective, the rainfall belts, like the western part of the state's drier. And as you come east, like in the North Platte area, we're looking at 16 to 24 inch annual rainfall. And so that kind of determines landscape and habitat and what have you. But Nebraska has a good mix of substantial waterfowl on specific times, and when a waterfowl properly comes up, I mean, it doesn't sit there longer than a week. I mean, they are just in really high demand. Then you'll get those hunters from out in your neck of the woods and want really good mule deer country, and north and south of North Platte area offers very high quality mule deer hunting. Even the whitetail deer and turkeys especially. I mean, the guys that come out from the south, Alabama, Louisiana, even Florida, it's easy pickings for them out here. I mean, the ground's different, but they're so inundated with other people out trying to hunt turkeys, it's practically impossible for you to kill one. But they come out here, their killing percentage is like 95%.
We've got, where I'm at in Iowa, it's hard to kill in those easterns. What kind do you guys have out here? Do you have Merriam's, or do you have kind of a mix?
You go out in western Nebraska, get up in that Pine Ridge. That's where the Merriam was first introduced back in the early 80s. So they've really done pretty well there. But then they've done they move around and have expanded their territory as well. But I mean, mainly in central Nebraska, we're looking at a Rio Merriam combo, the hybrid birds. And once in a while, you'll pick up an eastern, but it gives you that variety as well.
I always hear those Merriams, they're really vocal and respond to calls, and man, I tell you what, those easterns, they can really play head games with you. They'll just go silent on you, and the next thing you know, they're at 10 yards and you didn't even know they were coming in.
Man, I hear you there. The difference between a white tail and a chocolate tail, you know what I'm saying? you learn, as you go. I was introduced to turkey hunting from a guy from Alabama here in Nebraska, and they're, like I said, those guys are darn really good at turkey hunting, period. And but we have that habitat even south of North Platte. You get out into the Pine Ridge. You get, anywhere that has some terrain, has some good roosting trees, and, the turkeys seem to do really well here.
Earlier you mentioned mule deer. You ever do much mule deer hunting yourself?
You know what? I do mule deer hunting on my job. I run across some nice animals while I'm out and about looking at the land. Not really so much a big game hunter, but I've seen some really nice specimens in the state of Nebraska.
That's definitely on the bucket list for me someday, is to go on a mule deer hunt. So maybe I'll have to come out this way.
Hey man, that's great too, and don't forget the elk. They have really done well. You get up in the Pine Ridge area where they historically have been, but even south of North Platte and in some of the sections of ground just south of North Platte into the Box Elder to Snell Canyon to all the way along that corridor east seems to hold a pretty good population of elk, which is neat.
A lot of the articles I read, you'll see from time to time where they say don't sleep on central or western Nebraska for whitetail hunting. And just on my drive over here to this Buffalo Bill Expo, going along I-80, there were multiple areas I noticed in central to western Nebraska. Like, you'd see these wide open fields, and seemed like every plot had a big redneck hunting blind on it or some sort of a whitetail blind. And is it pretty popular for whitetail hunting this side of the state?
Brent, that's a great question. I mean, we're inundated with whitetail deer, especially up along the Platte River corridor. And you really want to keep your eyes peeled at dusk and dawn situations because, especially during hunting season. There's some really good genetics of whitetail deer that run up and down the South Platte River and the North Platte River corridor. And you know what? You get some mule deer too come out in sandhills, looking for water. But the whitetail is definitely the most abundant, and there's some really nice ones I ran into in the past.
Yeah, there's definitely been some giants killed in Nebraska. I like to look up, past, big monster bucks that have been taken in some of those world record books that you see. And one of my all-time favorites is the Dell Austin buck, which was killed in Nebraska, well over 250 inches with a recurve back in the 60s. And, it just shows you anything can happen. And if if people want to do an out-of-state hunt, maybe Nebraska would be an option, right?
Oh yeah, and especially where you're from too. But I think Nebraska, that the population basis, I think if you start looking at that compared to because any animal that thrives in the wild has got to have food, water, and shelter. And if you get in certain areas, especially with deer hunting, and you're not managing the does and you're killing 2 and 3 year old bucks. That is what it is, and that as well as I do. But Nebraska is beautiful. It's very diverse. Come on out and give me a call. Or look us up at lashleyland.com and look at some of our land listings. I mean, we do a phenomenal job of taking a piece of land and making it beautiful on our website and inventorying it properly so that an investor can look at it and put a pencil to it and figure out exactly what they want if it'll work for them. And I've been selling real estate for a long time, and so have the rest of my colleagues and team at Lashley Land, and we're good at our job.
Seems like, myself, my dream someday is I always say I want to own 40 acres, have somewhere to live on it, and also be able to hunt it. What is the market like in your area you cover in Nebraska? When you look at recreational land right now, what's that market look like?
That's another really good question, Brent. Location. And the thing is with recreational properties, if they're on a smaller side, 40, 50 acres, and I do come across those occasionally, they're kind of a price point type of a sale. But as a rule of thumb, average recreational property is roughly $3,000 an acre, $3,500, somewhere in there. Use that as a basis. Do your research. Look at comparable sales. I can do all that for you. You can make a decision if that's something you want or not. But a very good idea of what that land should bring, and it just comes from experience and have a really good database of comp sales and and good people in the business that can help you determine an opinion of value.
What advice, Jon, would you give first-time land buyers, whether it be farmland, but as we're talking here about recreational land, do you have any advice you'd give them for first-time buyers?
I run across that question quite often, and obviously, if you could lease that property you're looking at for a season, based on what you want to hunt, would be, the most advantageous thing for a buyer. But, basically, if I list a piece of property of recreational land, I want to inventory it properly. If I have a waterfowl property and I know it's good, then they got to get my stamp of approval. But most of the time, if I sell a piece of land, then I can get that information from the seller. Like, what is it? What are the total kills? What are the genetics? And those kind of things. But sometimes you got to take a risk too. But land is one of those things where, if you can swing it, it's not going to get any cheaper. Land values keep going up because there's only so much of it. And if you buy a piece of primitive land, you improve it, put in trails, put in cameras, put in good fence, you'll do well at the end. If you hold on to it for at least 5 years, you should be able to put at least 20-25% in your pocket.
We're talking here with Jon Farley from Lashley Land and Recreational Brokers. Jon, where does your passion for the outdoors and for hunting come from?
Well, I'm lived here all my life. It's fascinated with waterfowl, and like I said, I told you earlier, I guided for. I was a snow goose guide for 25 years, and I've covered the entire state of Nebraska and beyond. And so I'm primarily a waterfowl person, and Nebraska at certain times, with the exception of this past season, is usually phenomenal. As
you look back, do you have any? Not to put you on the spot, but do you have any top hunting stories that really stuck with you over the years that you'd feel free with sharing the listeners with?
I have done everything in waterfowl you can possibly do. I have the lanyard with the bands to show. But, you shoot a leucistic goose or a hybrid, goose or, situations. I always like to take the young guys out and to the blind and let them get their limit and see the look on their face and have a quality hunting dog go out and do the job it's supposed to do. I've had 2 dogs. Well, I've had 5 dogs in my life. My last 2 are phenomenal. And there's so many good stories that, I could sit here all day and bore you to death. But, but the thought process is to get the youth going, and I've been a big contributor to Ducks Unlimited for the last several decades, and so I look at that as a whole, and you put a good dog down, and you're later in life, it just takes a lot of energy and desire, and I just don't have the time to start another one, and my job's my hunting now, so that satisfies me more than anything.
Yeah, someone that I'm really good friends with often says, take someone hunting. And I think that's a really good motto to have, especially when you look at a younger generation and introducing them to the outdoors.
Absolutely. It's not going to be that way forever, so you got to take advantage of it while you can.
Lastly, before you go, you might just again tell the listeners more about Lashley Land and Recreational Brokers and some of the services again that you offer.
Yeah, I'm glad to do that to you, Brent. We've got the best marketing team you could have if you want to sell your property. We have been staying at the head of the market in the state of Nebraska for many, many years, and it takes a team dedicated to staying ahead of everybody else. And we have found those sources so that if you're looking to sell your property, we can actually track it, we can actually target, and then put our heads together and come up with ideas to help sell your land better than anybody, in my opinion.
Jon, really nice to meet you here. Thanks so much for the time and joining us here on the Brownfield Network.
Hey, thank you, Brent.
Again, that's Jon Farley with Lashley Land and Recreational Brokers, and we appreciate you joining us here in this latest interview. Be sure to check out their website if you have any questions or want more information. I'm Brent Barnett with Brownfield Ag News, joining you from the Buffalo Bill Farm and Ranch Expo in North Platte, Nebraska. I certainly had a lot of fun meeting Jon at the Expo out there in North Platte. It was also really cool to see the countryside in that part of the state. There was a lot of great deer and turkey habitat along my drive across I-80, and that really got me fired up for spring turkey season, which is just around the corner. Thanks again for joining us here on Outdoor Adventures. You can always check out any of our past interviews and episodes in the archives wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Brent Barnett with Brownfield. Have a great weekend.